morning. Sanamukela hlelweni lomuhla ekseni kunglesihlanu Kusile Breakfast Show. Thank you so much for joining us. Londvuselako ngulungelele Makagula sathemba ukuthi nibe nobusobulo obuhle sabanga ukuthi nekhethe kuvuka nathi lomhla ekseni tilishumi nesikhombisa enyangeni yendlovu lenkulu. Kunglesihlanu nje namhla sidabe sibuke tindzaba letintsafu kwecala nje sidabe sikhulumisana nalabasuka kwakha indvota evikini eliphelile ke emaphoyisa kokumbiko bokuthi kusukela ngenyanga yaBhimbidvwane ukuthi kube ngimanje emadvota noma ke bamfu besilisa labatibulele balenganiselwa kulaba ngu45 sabe sikhulumisana nalabasuka kwakha indvota njengenhlangano nje lementarisha bamfu besilisa kanye nebafana sifuna bakhulumisa njengetinhlelo noma ke ema-interventions labanayo ukuzama kuvikela bobabe ukuthi babakhulumise ngokuthi bangadithathi timpilo tabo ikakhulukazi nje sibuka dona tindzaba te-mental health nekwekuva nje ukuthi kubaleka kangakanani ukuthi besilisa noma ke bobabe bende isiqiniseko sokuthi baphilile engcondweni sidabe sikhulumisana na-communications officer wakhona kakwakha indvota Bandile Lukheli lomhla ekseni ukuva nje ukuthi ngabe vele mhlambe yona lenhlangano seyifinyelele kubobabe labanganani ngoba sitakhumbula ukuthi abagcini ngokuthi baba mentorishe kuphela bayaphuma bahambe bayobavakashela etinkhundleni nasemimangweni lapho bakhona khona babakhulumisa babafundzise ukuthi yini kumele bayende kuze benesiqiniseko sokuthi baphilile kahle engcondweni bayeveta ke nemivo yabo bababe lokunye labakuvetako nje indzabe ukuthi vele solo bayesaba kuhamba kuyo ubika dona tindzaba tehlubeteka emakhaya emaphoyiseni kepha sitatiteka kabanti leto naye Bandile Lukheli lomhla ekseni at 6:30 bese kuthi ngale kwa7 sitabe sikhulumisana na Miss Cultural Heritage Lindelwa Amaziya nje mtakhumule ukuthi kulamaviki nje lengcile solo sikhulumisa bona bonobuhle kuva kabanti ngemisebenzi yabo laba yendako solo bangena kuletikhundla Lindelwa Amaziya ke she is a 22-year-old student at the University of Eswatini and she is studying journalism and media sidabe sikhulumisana naye lomhla ekseni kuva kabanti ngama projects akhe laseka waqalile nama projects ke lafise kuwenda lomnyeke umsebenzi wakhe ukuthi avakashele tikolwa ikakhulukazi mangabe kunemisebenzi yabo ye cultural events kuleli viki nje bekavakashele isikolo saseduze high school sabe sikhulumisana naye kuva kabanti nje ngetinhlelo takhe kanye namaphupho akhe lafise kuwafeza and of course it's a Friday saphenze sibuke nato temidlalo with our sports journalist Fabrice Musonere ngalo kwaloko kulesikhathi asithathe ikhefu sibuye sisathathe indaba tetfu.
Pay your TV license quickly and easily with MTN Momo. Simply dial *007 *3 hash and select option 8 for TV license. Enter your national ID number as your reference and the amount you wish to pay. Then enter your PIN to confirm your payment. Once your payment has been made, you'll receive a confirmation SMS of your payment. If you're a first-time payer, you get another SMS for your TV license. So legalize your entertainment from the comfort of your home. Pay your TV license the easy and convenient way with MTN Momo.
Everywhere you go, MTN.
Welcome back. Sitawubuka tindzaba tetfu namhla ekuseni. Umhlonishwa wandvunankhulu Cleopas uvakashelwe ngumcondzisi wenhlangano yakamhlaba UNAIDS lobuke sifundza seMpumalanga neNingizimu Afrika Anne Kituku Shongwe. Shongwe kuleli kutawukhulumisana nabo bonke labatsintekako mayelana nekuthi live laseSwatini lilwa njani neligciwane HIV kanye nekuthi yini lekumele yentiwe kucinisa tinhlelo tekulwa naleli gciwane. Indvuna yelitiko leti-70 iphela buthelezi ithi emave ase-Afrika lofaka ekhatsi live laseSwatini asadzinga kubanjiswa ekusukumiseni imigomo letawucinisekisa kuhlalisana kweti-70 nebacashi. Indvuna yabe ikhuluma emhlanganweni lochubekako wenhlangano yakamhlaba lebuke tindzaba teti-70 lewubanjelwe eveni leSwitzerland.
Inhlangano yakamhlaba lebuke tindzaba teti-70 i-International Labour Organization ibambe umhlangano wemakhulu lamathafu nemashumi lamane nesikhombisa 347th session kubukisana tindzaba tekuhlalisana kwebacashi neti-70 lobanjwe eveni leSwitzerland eGeneva. Live laseSwatini limelwe indvuna yelitiko leti-70 nenhlalakahle yato Phila Buthelezi lopheleketelwe ngumabhalane lomkhulu kulelitiko Makhosini Mdawe nakomshana weti-70 Mthunzi Shabangu. Indvuna ibese ichaza kabanti ngalomhlangano.
Sinapha sikemiliyoni Eswatini yodwa Eswatini ithunyana usadak njengalento wale nathuwa thuthuba member headset elo sadak akunyalo Eswatini and ekusebenzile lesethu so until 2024 siwendile kumsebenzi usaqhubeka nako ukuthi promote certain inhloko lethetha ukunomnyeswa njengoba besithola statement itolo sasadak kuphela kodwa sesise Africa yokana ikulunywa kwaEswatini ekutheni itsini Afrika emtondweni lokhona lomusha lovela kwa-ILO ekutheni sale akha inhlanganyela netinhlangano tonke tangamhlakuhlangeni.
Lo mhlangano kubheke ukuthi uthathe emavikini amabili kanti live laseSwatini nhla wetfula umbiko walo mhlangano emhlanganweni lotako emave esifundza lesendasi nelive kati le-Afrika. Etindzabeni ye-Eswatini TV kubika samkelisiwe khoza kanti tifombe tichamka itiko leti-70.
Setingetulu kwetinkulungwane letingemakhulu lamane 400,000 tihlahla lesetihlanyelwe eveni ngaphansi kwehlelo lokuhlanyela tihlahla lelatiwa nge-1.2 million tree planting campaign. Lokhu kuvetwe indvuna yelitiko letekuvakasha netindzaba temvelo Moses Vilakati.
Enyangeni lephelile ilitiko letekuvakasha nemvelo lisukumise lihlelo lokuhlanyela tihlahla letisigidzi nencenye lelatiwa ngele 1.2 million tree planting campaign ngenhloso ekuhlanyela tihlahla letisigidzi nencenye ingakefika ilanga nemahlathi leligujwa njalo mhla tinge-21 enyangeni lesetulo. Indvuna yelitiko letekuvakasha nemvelo Moses Vilakati ithi kumanje tihlahla lesetihlanyelwe ngaphansi kwalolu hlelo tingetulu kwetinkulungwane letingemakhulu lamane.
Cishe sesiyenca ku-400,000 wato letihlahla lesetitona tihlanyele. Lokho kuyakhombisa ukuthi sitawugcina mhlawumbe silibambile lezi ngoba kube kuyangathi ngabe siyaestablishela kulo 1.2 million kodwa sabuka ukuthi sive sing 1.2 million ngaloko ke nangabe nje umuntu angahlanyela sihlahla ikakhulu lesifuna leti emtsaba letakithi lesisima indigenous trees ngoba leto siyathi lokuthi tinelikusasa lelihle ikakhulu lekudwadwas basitshela ukuthi tiyakhona lokuthi tivele tithathe labo carbon dioxide khanze ukuthi tindzaba tanga climate change sekuneni lokungendele. Siyabonga nje kakhulu kulabo lasebatibandakanyele nalomsebenzi ngoba siyawubona ukuthi kunelikusasa leliya embili. Siyethemba ukuthi lesigodi nesigodi ngemuti bonke batawugcina bahlanyele izihlahla sikwazi ukuthi tibe nelikusasa.
Tikolo nata tikasalele emuva njengoba ngaphansi kwalolu hlelo sikolo lesiphakeme seluhlokohla sihlanyele tihlahla letingetulu kwamakhulu lasihlanu 570 kanti sikolo lesincane sasemhlangeni sona sihlanyele tihlahla letingetulu kwamakhulu lamabili 260. Etindzabeni ye-Eswatini TV kubika samkelisiwe khoza nginasikhumbuzo Dlamini eMbabane.
Itiko letinkhundla seletfule ngalokusemtsetfweni isikhulumba lesihamba nencola emakhuba kanye neliplantela enhlanganweni lethiwa kuvinjelweni masibambisane multi-purpose cooperative ekuvinjelweni ngaphansi kwenkhundla yasenkhaba. Lesikhulumba sibite imali lengetulu kwemali lesigidzi 1.2 million amalangeni.
Ekuvinjelweni masibambisane multi-purpose cooperative inhlangano lenemalungana ne-20 yasekuvinjelweni. Le nhlangano isekele litiko letenkundla ekusengeni isikhuluma emakhuba kanye nelilandela ukubita imali engetulu kwesigidi 1.2 million emalangeni. Indvuna yelitiko letenkundla David Nkambalala ibongele le nhlangano seyiqale kubona titselo tekusebenta kwayo.
Uyaqale asho ukuthi bekunene masungula lesikhwama bekunakule sesikuva la evinjelweni ukuthi njengoba beseyiqalile ukusebenza sevele sebake behlukaniselana 5,000 umntamo. Lokuyinkomba ke ukuthi uma njengoba sebaqalile bona bathola imali ngetimali 5,000 umthola nje uhlele ekhaya kubaluleke kakhulu lokho. Sebengcile nalapho bona siyeva ukuthi sebefike nalapha sebaqalele omunye umsebenzi ngayo lenkabi lena sikhulumba lesinhle kangaka yokuqala titini. Uyabona ke ukuthi vele uhulumende wetinkundla masithi uyasebenza bufakazi lobulesifuba ngalabantu kungasho ukuthi ukukhulunywa nabanye abantu kuyasijabulisa.
Ilungu lePhalamende lenkundla yaseNgaba Zakhile Magonga libonge ingwenyama inkosi Mswati wesithathu lwanesikhwama lesithuthukisa eMaswati.
Kantazane 3 million imali lokho sibidana. Sisibusula usibongile ngonyameni ukuthi nemali yobambisile sempesasena. Sinta uqela ngibhekelo mase ngoba usithale esibambisile eminyaka mayethubeka imali engepeketeke umvile shemene wesithoyeko kwalehlakalo ukuthi uthi lesikhuluma lesisebatalela umsebenzi nakhona ngakhophela imali.
Emalunga lenhlangano uma ngonesive senkundla yaseNgaba akawuvali umlomo ngentuthuko lelethwe isikhwama saka-RDF kusukela etikolweni eMadibe inhlalakahle kanye nentuthuko kule nkundla. Edinzabeni Eswatini TV ngibongo simakagula elivinjelweni.
Libandla lelibuke kusebenta kunyuvesi yakuleli UNESCO selithethe isinqumo sokuyivala le nyuvesi. Mabhalane wenyuvesi Dr. Salebona Simelana uthi leli bandla lithethe lesinqumo kulandzela ukuthi isimo asisiso lesihle kule nyuvesi njengaloku lisebentile tingaphansi kwenhlangano ye-Association of Lecturers, Academic and Administrative Personnel tabeka phansi emathulusi emavikini lambalwa lengcile tikhala ngekwengetelwa emaholo. Dr. Simelane uthi iSenate ibuke kakhulu kuphepha kwabafundi kanye netisebenzi tele nyuvesi nayithatha lesinqumo. Lokuvalwa kwale nyuvesi kusho labafundza full time kanye nalabafundza part time angeke basachubeka netifundvo tabo. Lombiko lokhishwe nguDr. Simelane uthi bafundzi bekumele babe sebaphume baphela emabaleni ale nyuvesi sekushaye insimbi 11 ekuseni. Dr. Simelane uthi kubhalisa kutawuchubeka kute kube ngumhla ka-31 kule nyanga lesetulu. Uthi lithulusi lekufundza laka Moodle litawuhlala livuliwe kude labafuna ukulisebentisa batawukhona ukufundza. Litiko letemphilo lithi njengaloku ngemsombuluko evikini lelitako litawube licala luhlelo lokukhipha abomanyokane ebantfaneni besikolwa kubheke ukuthi kube kunyenti kukhala ngekubonyabonyeka njengaloku solo bagcina kubakhipha ngeminyaka wa 2019 lokwenta ukuthi babe nabomanyokane labanyenti. Lokhu kuvetwe ngulocwaninga tifo itiko letemphilo Kusile kotfwako lothi labomanyokane batawukhishwa kubafundzi kusuka emabangeni laphansi ema-primary schools kuya kuma-high schools. Luhlelo litawuphetsa natitine enyangeni letako.
Locwaninga tifo itiko letempilo Kusile kotfwako uthe amafomu lekumele agcwalise batali ukuthi bayavuma yini ukuthi abantu ababo banathe lamaphilisi abomanyokane bamingiswa etikolweni emavikini lamathathu lengcile. Uchaza ukuthi kutawuba khona kukhala ngekubonyabonyeka ebantwaneni kodwa kude isizathu sekwetfuka. Sibhekile lokuthi mhlawumbe bantwana bataba nako lokukhalakhala ngetisu lapha nalapha kodwa ke asikabhekile sisu ukuthi mhlawumbe size sengce elangeni size secele emalangeni lamabili nabe solo singabi ngcono litiko lethula ka977 li ready ukuthi lisibambise sive kuloko. Lokuthiwa uchubeka uchaza kabanti ngebulukhulu labaye bahlangabetela nawo balidiko basenta lo msebenzi. Elenye challenge sesibe nabo uyukhanze ukuthi labanye abantwana betabede tindzaba tekudla ukhanze nasifika lesikolweni mhlambe kude ezondla kulawo malanga but lesesikwende ngoba letikola sihambisa leti schedule noma le timetable isheshe ifike emakhaya sesicela ukuthi namuhla ke siyeda kulesikola sicela ukuthi bantwana
bete baphethe kudla batakudlela la sikolweni akasho nje umntwana ukuthi hayi ngidlile ekhaya siye singamniketile lo kanjalo lokunye ke mhlawumbe kuye kube indzawo umuntu akhanze ukuthi imoto ngoba phela kudzingeka inqobo yemoto noma icampaign kodwa ke uhulumende uyaphuthatha lapha nalapha edinini takhe ukhanze ukuthi sigcina sesinako siyasitakala.
Inhlangano kaMhlaba yetempili World Health Organization ithi lo hlelo lokukhipha umanyukane kufanele lifinyelele lokungenani ebantwaneni labangu-75% lokufaka ukuthi isolo lacala lolu hlelo lakuleli lonto kahle kakhulu njengaloku lenza ngemalengiso ku-75%. Edinzabeni kubika Fortune Dlangamandla ngilavuma inkosi inzinisa 7.
Kusukela ngenyanga yengongoni eminyakeni ophelile tikhulile imali letibolekwe abantu emabhange nga-0.6% nanoma intengo yemali ikhulile. Lokhu kucukethwe ngumbiko wenyanga wetinkhomba tesimo somnotfo pheceleti i-monthly statistical release lokhishwe libhange lelikhulu i-Central Bank of Eswatini.
Libhange lelikhulu umjoli weMaswati i-Central Bank of Eswatini njalo ngenyanga likhipha umbiko wetinkomba tesimo semnotfo kutsi time kanjani inyanga ngenyanga tikhomba kwenyuka noma kwehla pheceleti monthly statistical release. Ngalesibili libhange likhiphe umbiko wetinkomba tesimo sekuma kwemnotfo wenyanga yabhimbidvwane kanye nenyanga yendlovana kulomnyaka. Lo mbiko ukhomba kutsi timali tekutsenga impahla yangaphandle noma timali talamanye emave lesitokhona silive kutsenga ngato kwanyalo time ku-7.9% lokukhomba kwehla ngalokuyimfica nengxenye ekhulwini 9.9% ngenyanga ngenyanga. Lo mbiko uyaveta nekuthi nanoma intengo yemali ikhulile ngenyanga yabhimbidvwane ikhula ngalokuyingxenye ekhulwini 0.25%. Timali letibolekwe bantfu ngemabhange abo tikhulile nje kancane nga-0.6% sukela ngenyanga yengongoni. Kanti ngeminyaka letimali tikhule nga-10.1% lengenyanga yabhimbidvwane betime ku-17.1 billion emalangeni. Kulo mbiko kuyavela nekuthi imali lekhona eveni lesetandleni tebantfu lokungaba ngu-cash noma lesebhange nako konke lokhu bantfu labangakusebentisa konga imali pheceleti broad money supply yona yehle ngalokusithupha ekhulwini nengxenye 6.3% ngenyanga ngenyanga. Lo mbiko uchubeka uvete nekuthi imali yelive lekhona lengakhona kwenta tintfo lokungaba ngama-shares langathengiseka ukuthi abe ngu-cash masinyane ime ku-7.4 billion emalangeni. Edinzabeni Eswatini TV kubika Samkelisuke Khoza Sempabane.
Libandla letelkhetfo nemincele lithi litivulile tandla kwamukela imivo lechamuka ezweni letawulisita ekutfutfukiseni ukusebenta kwalo kusalungiselelwa lukhetfo lolutako. Leli bandla belihlangene netinhlangothi letahlukahlukene belisebenzisana nato ngenhloso yekuva imivo yato emhlanganweni lobanjwe ehhotela lase-Hilton Garden Inn eMbabane.
Libandla letelkhetfo nemincele lidibene netinhlangothi letahlukahlukene emimangweni ngenhloso yekuthola imibono yesive ukuthi libandla lingathuthuka njani lisalungiselela lukhetfo lolutako. Siveke sibe nemibuto salivunulisa ke futhi leli bandla lapho singalivunulisa khona.
Ekungaba kuphela ukuthi sibe nalo lithuba singuliki la khona babe president wethu bamthatha benawikisi atawubika khona bonke nabafundisi ngiyabikisi aphelele esontweni nesizwe asonzele i-BC atokufundisa kanjani na-consent kanjani na-conference.
If ibizana kuqala abuke lokuqala ukuthi okay wendakala bekuqala how can we take the two benefit us that to affect their participation so that everyone could be engaged. I do contract and sharply.
How does it work? What are the processes? Credibility of it? Negotiate ekugcineni if there is any dispute. I-system ingabe ingakhanzekali ibe hit play your dispute. Lokhulumela leli bandla mbonisa ibhembe ukuthi bayayimukela imbono yesive letawusita kusebenta kwaleli bandla.
Uma ngabe kukhona lababona khona ukuthi libandla lihamba liba lifishane sebangaveta leto tindlela letingasetshenziswa ukukhuthata ngoba libandla lifisa ukuthi bonke abantu babe ingcenye yalo lukhetho.
Leli bandla ke liyaqhubeka nekufundisisa ngelukhetho emimangweni yakuleli. Edinzabeni namuhla ngingiyani Msibi ngisehotela lase-Hilton eMbabane.
Amaphoyisa sekakhonile ukuthola imoto yehlobo le-Mercedes-Benz leyebiwe kusomabhizinisi esipiki kodwa asachubeka nekufuna tibhamu letiyimfica letebiwe kanye nale moto. Umxhumanisi wamaphoyisa nesive Superintendent Phindile Vilakati uthi labo zilani le moto bafike bayishiya kumathamo.
Siwutholile umbiko ekuseni singamaphoyisa ngetithuba dabo 11 ngokuthi kunabo zidlani labahlasela ekhaya lapha eSpiki edolobheni bangena bathatha imoto bahlomile bathatha kanye netibhamu letikhona kuleli khaya. Embikweni lesitholile ukuthi itibhamu lethambile ting9 nemoto yeMercedes. Siphumile ke sikamaphoyisa sathi chithisaka kufulandzela laba bekunene labagangako. Lokwendekile ke imoto sesiyitholile sithole ukuthi bayilahlile lengakumomathamo eGeden. Kwanyalo ke silamahlathini nje sidama ukuthola bona laba bekunene. Amlethi thethwe kulo shika lo kuba itibhamu leting4 uyishwayi le start kakhulu mhlambe kutingeleni bese bathi ibhamu leting5 ema revolver. Ngisoma business ke lo leyanzawo leya lo kufanele ukuthi vele ahlale angilo tiphepisako ngayo yonke indlela. Umuntu fangathi nje siveni siyacela ukuthi sisibambise labane information ngalabantu noma lababonako abashaye 999 noma bo9 labane singamshayela na 112 noma ke sishayele babe madlopha lobuke indzaba tebucala esifundeni sakaHoho enombolweni 7606 8493 7606 8493.
Libandla lidelocate nemincele etinkundla Elections and Boundaries Commission lathi sasive kule miphakathi ngaphansi kwaletinkundla letilandzelako ukuthi sibe yingcenye yemihlangano yokufunza ngelikhetfo ngananka emalanga ngalesihlanu mhla ka-17 March esifundeni saseshiselweni. Leli bandla litabe senkundleni yakasomtongo nasengudzeni imiphakathi kusesini ezindwendweni elihlekweni ephangweni kanye nakamhawo bese kuthi ngemgcibelo esifundeni sakaHoho leli bandla litabe etinkundleni ehukwini kanye nakalobamba imiphakathi kukalamgabi ezabeni ekudzingeni kanye nasemlindazwe. Elibonjeni leli bandla litabe lisemathanjeni North imiphakathini kumambane kanye nakumaphungwane. Kamanzini leli bandla litabe lisenkundleni emkhiweni imiphakathi kukadvokolwako kakhuphuka kanye nasemjoli eshiselweni. Leli bandla litabe lisekazombodze emuva emphakathini ebulekeni mampondweni kanye nakazombodze. Bese kuthi ngelisomvo leli bandla litabe lisesifundzeni sakaHoho inkundla kusemadlanga emphisi imiphakathi kukadvokolwako kanye nakumavula. Elibonjeni inkundla kusemathanjeni North imiphakathi kuselukhetseni kanye nasetikhuba. Kamanzini inkundla ngilobamba lomdzala namanzini North imiphakathi kusekufinyeni manzini Central kanye nasemnyenyweni. Bese kuthi eshiselweni inkundla kusengudzeni esandleni naseshiselweni 2 imiphakathi kukamshengu kashiba etibondzeni kanye nasembeka. Sikhatsi kucala kwenhlangano kuto tonke letindzawo ngo-10 ekuseni. Labasha nalabakhubatekile bomake nabobabe bangasali kulomhlangano. Simemetelo sikhishwa ngusihlalo welibandla umfana Nkosi Mhlabuhlangene Dlamini. Inhlangano yakaPhilani eMaswati isemkhankasweni wokusita inhlangano letisacatfuta tebalimi kutsi tikhule tibe nemkhicido lobonakalako. Ncobile Fakutse longumfundzisi kule nhlangano uthe inhlangano tingachumana nabo kude tisitakale.
Ncobile Fakutse ngumfundzisi wetekulima enhlanganweni yakaPhilani Maswati ukuthi bayinhlangano banenjongo yokuthuthukisa basite ngekulima nekuthola timakethe kuti inhlangano yetisakhula kuteke tikhule tibone nemkhicido yato.
Okay, my trainings beswentela kaPhilani Maswati because i-mushroom idzinga stove nawufuna kuyihlanyela so that's why tintito futhi to eMarketing Research nakaPhilani Maswati lekaphokolwako. So bebeta khona bomake siba train base kuboplanzeli ikakhulu nje le kaHoho. Manje bese bayabuda la ka Facebook nababona sipostile ukuthi sinenda njani amakhowa yelinye plastic nekhathi endlini kwentekani. Sabese ke mhlekazi ukuthi nophumani niyele emiphakathini niyobafundisa.
Uthi nasebawendile umsebenzi kuleyo ndzawo babese baqhubekela kulenye kanti ke betinhlangano abafisa kusitakala bangachumana naye tinkundleni tekuchumana ka Facebook naka LinkedIn kuteke kuthuthukiswe balimi eveni bakhona ngekudiphilisa ngaloko lebakulimako noma ke loko labakwendako etindzabeni kubika Giyani Msibingi naSimuva Shongwe eGebeni.
Kodwa imidlalo lokhulumela inhlangano ledlalisa imidlalo yema-darts lapha eveni Flag Nxumalo uthi le nhlangano itimisele ukubona emacembu nabadlali balomdlalo bachamuka etikolweni njengendlela yokuthuthukisa lo mdlalo. Nxumalo uthe amave aselivikatini lase-Afrika lathuthukile lo mdlalo asebenzisa itikolo njengendlela yokukhulisa lo mdlalo. Nxumalo bekhuluma ngesikhathi ekuchubeka umhlangano sikolo welanga linye wale nhlangano kanye netikolo letisihlanu letibonakala tihamba embili kulo mdlalo. Umhlangano sikolo wabubanjele ezolweni.
Inhlangano ledlalisa umdlalo wama-darts lapha eveni beyibambe umhlangano sikolwane bafundi abaqhamuka etikolweni letisihlanu letfaka ekhatsi isikolo saselangeni high school, umhlatane high school kanye-ke neSwazi National High School kuletinye. Kuchubekane kubafundzisa-ke ngabumcoka balomdlalo nekuzama ukungeta tinombolo talabafundzi labangenela le mdlalo. Flag Nxumalo lokhulumela inhlangano yama-darts uyachaza ngabumcoka balomhlangano.
Sifuna ukuthi le sport sethu sibuyele emuva ku development sikhona ukuthi sidevelop le sport ku SADC region sizisitwaye ku Africa Cup then sifika ku PTC sihlangane nalabothishela nebantwana. Ngijabula kakhulu i-presentation yabo lebasipresentela yona ngale sport ukuthi bafundzeni namuhla ngama-darts phinze yini i-future yabo ngale sport.
Ngosi ngiphile Shongwe longitishela eNgona Park High School yena-ke uyachaza ukuthi umdlalo wama-darts uhambisana njani nemsebenzi wesikolo kubafundzi.
Ama-darts amcoka kakhulu kumntwana wesikolo ngoba 1 amfundzisa i-discipline. Umntwana odlala ama-darts njengoba discipline because the sport itself ngiso lesikufaka ku-discipline. Number 2, ama-darts ayakusita ukuthi ube familiar netinombolo. Siyathi-ke bantwana esikhathini esiningi uthola ukuthi bane-challenge ye-maths, bayisaba i-maths, but when you play darts kuyakusita ukuthi uti-familiarize netinombolo ngoba kuyabalwa kuyamayinaswa and masinyane kufuthi ukuthi udlala ube wathi usengisele nabani kufuna ngivale bani ngento yonke lento ufuna uyente at once, so ukusita na focus ama-darts ayakusita focus.
Kanti-ke labafundzi nabo bayachaza ukuthi yini labayizuzako kulo mdlalo.
They help with the academic performance necessarily due to maths. Kuningi lokudzinga ukubali lapha nasebhodini lapho-ke due to now multiplications nema-doubles nama-triples. So you have to necessarily multiply and know what's next. Umayinasele wena unganaki kakhulu phakathi. So that necessarily helps you with quick thinking.
That have also helped me in many ways, like in my thinking capacity, academic excellence, behavior, everything.
Lo mhlangano sikolo bewulilanga linye kanti bothishela kanye-ke nebafundzi baphumene nensayeya yokuthuthukisa-ke lo mdlalo. Etinzaweni temidlalo kubika Giyani Msibi umbiko uhlanganiswa ngFabrice Msonera ezulwini.
Ngaleto temidlalo sitibamba lapho tindzaba tethu lo mhla ekuseni sitabathle timakethe sibe sichubeke nehlelo senishini semasolutulo.
Why should we pay our TV license?
The content on our local television is actually more up to date. The industry is enhanced.
It is a criminal offense not to pay your TV license and attracts a fine of 500 emalangeni or 6 months imprisonment.
And the industry is definitely blooming, ladies and gentlemen. So that's what we have for you. But we'll be right back just after the break and we'll give you more of Miss V.
Pay my TV license. That's why I can enjoy the benefits of an enhanced industry and keep track with recent transformation.
Mommy, who pays for a TV license and what are they paying for?
The owners of TV set and gadget with a tuner like DVD set have to pay.
Pay your TV license at NetBank with the details provided on screen. Or use your cell phone via the mobile money pay. You could also visit your nearest post office and pay there. Pay your TV license via Eswatini Mobile Imali. any TV device retailer can purchase a license to trade. Pay your TV license and enhance the industry.
Welcome back. So lobukela hlelo Kusile Breakfast Show and good morning to you. Losanza kusivulela bezvedile earlier ukuthi sitabe sikhulumisana na communications officer olosuka enhlanganweni ikwakha invota kulandzela ke ukuthi emaphoyisa akhokha umbiko bekuthi kusukela ngenyanga ye January this year kude kube ngoMarch kulomnyaka losetulu ematfotsa noma ke besilisa labatibulele balenganiselwa ku 45 amashumi lamane nesihlanu lekusimo lesikabe kakhulu sida kukhulumisana naye lapha abandile kuva kabanti nje ukuthi ngabe ikhona inhlelo letendiwa ngiyo inhlangano kuzama mhlambe ukufundisa wona ematfotsa noma ke bamfu besilisa ukuthi bangadivikela kanjani kona iqiniseko sokuthi they are mentally healthy. Sizivele sinaye lapha in the studio. Bandile, good morning and welcome. Sabonga ukuthi ube nathi lamhla ekuseni. I think topic lena lebalekile lemcoka as well lokhu ukuthi nje kuyathusa ukuthi you know in 3 months 45 males have committed suicide. But before we get into that, nje sifuna ukuvela ukuthi as a organization you've been around since 2012 and nathi sethela ama objectives as an organization that you want to meet as kuhamba isikhathi. Have you been able to meet those objectives noma ke ama goals, because ngiyadluka ukuthi you're an organization that mentors boys and men. Ingabe vele mhlambe nikhonile nikufika lenifisa kufika khona as an organization?
Thank you very much and thank you for having us on the show. It's been 10 years, we are pushing 10 years now as Waka Invota, mentoring young males and boys. The objectives are clear. Let's mentor young men and boys to be allied in gender, equality and social justice. And the objectives are still stand as that. It's been a very interesting journey. I think when we set point in 2012, no one thought it would be here. At this point, we are actually one of the thought leaders in male mentoring. Not to blow our own horn, but we're one of the thought leaders in male mentoring in the country. So what we wanted to do mostly was social behavioral change, and we have seen a gradual increase of number of guys who are now changing their behaviors, of how they think and their attitude. I think one of a good reference recently was when we introduced the psychosocial support unit in our organization. A lot of guys were calling our psychosocial support officer to say, can I schedule a session with you? Can I have a sit down with you? But mostly of all, we also wanted to kind of do a financial independence, to groom young men and boys to be financially independent. And in that program, we have really impacted a lot of people. If I go to the M&E, but Dr. as we were pushing to the tens of thousands number of boys that we've actually engaged with. And we've also been able to influence legal reform. When you're talking of the SOTV of 2018, okay, I was in the forefront there lobbying for that act. So we've quite been able to achieve what we set out to achieve. But then I also think there's still a lot of more to be done. We cannot be relaxed in our challenges, and now we've achieved it.
Okay, so what kind of conversations do you normally have with these men or boys, you know, topics? What are the topics that linwakhulumisako njengibekise nje, you know, a lot of men bayesaba ukukhuluma mangabe mhlambe they have challenges, noma mhlambe they are being victimized, noma bahlukubetwa emakhaya. Are they able to speak out when you have these conversations? Because I will assume ukuthi nale setup ibang leyo nje le right ukuthi ingaba nalama talks lawa. So are they able to speak out? Basho ukuthi bona kahle bahlushwa yini? What are their challenges?
Thank you very much. I think what we try to do when we're engaging men and boys is to match, as we call them, affectionately call them, to resonate with us so we can kind of be in the same wavelength. We try to have a dialogue, a fun learning setup. And our approach is on 3 aspects: male health, holistic male health, to focus on mental health. Because if you're talking of mental health, we're so keen to talk about sexual health, social health, reproductive and all. But what we're focusing on is mental health, is holistic mental health, and then social responsibility, and then financial independence. So we have a nice curriculum that we have developed that was informed by the work that we have done. So in this curriculum, we have had a conversation where now we are talking about the mental health. If we are learning about health, where we are talking about mental health, and we find out really important points that are rooted on 3 things that we are also trying to help Emaja to unlearn, that we are working together with Emaja to unlearn a bit at a bit. They are rooted on toxic masculinity, gender norms, and of course wanting gender stereotypes. These issues, they range from the fact that men should be providers. These are the gender norms in the society. Imboza kufanele provide, imboza must, is what ladies say on social media these days. And that pressure, imboza must, if it gets you real deep as a man, now it figures a kind of toxic masculinity that says, I'm a man, I don't tell anyone that I'm struggling. I go through my stuff in my corner and I come here, I smile like everything's fine. Now, we now have a man who's going through a lot but cannot even speak out. Now it becomes a bit hard to work with that, but we are trying to now say, let's unlearn that as guys. It's okay to speak out. It's okay to reach out for help. It's not in a humiliating way, of course. We're not saying go out there and humiliate yourself, right? But find someone that you can have their confidence, someone you can confide on. Speak with them openly about that. And one thing that we have also noticed is also about toxic masculinities. Things happen in relationship, guys. When things happen in relationships, men they feel like not me. Hey, this girl does not know me. Not me. Sometimes then they go on to commit gender-based violence. Now, okay, there's a magnitude of this now. I might get to prison. Then they opt on taking their life, which is not a choice, which is not something they should be entertaining in the first place. However, with the pressure that society has on guys, on men, that part becomes what they entertain the back of their head, because the pressure is just so much. I think we were just recently having a conversation with pastors, because when we try to engage men and boys, we don't just engage the young guys, we're engaging pastors. And the pastor says one of the things, this pastor was counseling, he's a counselor, marriage counselor. He said one of the things that he really focuses, that he really comes across on his work, is how actually men are saying, hey, the financial responsibility on me is too much. It becomes even worse when my wife says, bring the money so I can see. It's like, just write down the responsibilities and let me know, and let me see. So these are the issues that we really get to have, to work with in the ground, that to get from men. But most of all, what we need to know is that these issues, they are there, they exist, and there's no way we can run away from them. But most of all, they become very deadly when they are left unchecked, because they are rooted on these phenomena that we can learn. Those gender stereotypes that I'm a man, I should provide. Those toxic masculinities, I cannot tell anyone, I cannot cry. If it hurts, it feels like crying, go to your corner, cry. If it hurts and you feel like, no, I need to talk to someone, find someone you can talk to. And then there's the gender norms that is also perpetrated by the society. I'm 25. Samsung says I'm 22, I gotta get it now. I'm 25, graduate, but I'm unemployed. Society is looking at me. Now parents now are starting to look at me as well, because now they thought, okay, we're pushing this guy, don't let us go and come back. They're starting to look at me and feel one of the pressure, and then when I can see You know, those questions, they hurt, and then also there's past traumatic experiences, which goes on to how we raise our children, right? Because those past traumatic experiences, if unjemine ngakhula in a situation where bukushabo magela khaya ne ubabe beyangivele nathako, and I posted that it affected me. I posted that, never talked about it. The day it comes out, it comes back to the ground. It won't be a nice scenario on the ground. But these are the issues that we mostly deal with in the ground as we're working as KI.
All right. You did say that you reach out to probably 10,000 of men and young boys.
Yes.
But are you able to get through to them, you know, make follow-ups, make sure that they're okay, and bayeva lokuthi vele nikhuluma ngani, bayeva lokuthi baleka kangakanani ukuthi bakhulume ngezinkinga zabo? Are you able to get through to them?
True. That's very lovely. I think one of our philosophy that we work with is do no harm. Do no harm says, if I engage you and leave you today and not okay, follow up, I'm doing more harm than good, because now I've provided a platform for you to talk. Ngufundisile namhla ukuthi khuluma ne, kusasa ngisanginedile platform yokukhulume. Who are going to talk to? So I'm doing more harm than good. So we are happy to say we have quite a number of our majaha that we've worked with. They've come to us and say, hey, KI came to me. I think just yesterday I was reading one of our success story when I was preparing for my newsletter. I was reading one of our success story. This guy was saying how our chapter offices in Egualusen have become a safe haven for them. When everything's going on around, they go to the chapter offices where they find a chapter coordinator and assistant chapter coordinator who are helping them. They get to have access to laptops. Now they can write their CVs, apply. They get to, some of them studied more architecture, but they don't have the laptop or the computer. Now they have a computer there where they can draw the house plans and go sell to people using the resources that we have. So we do try to keep constant check with them. I think especially the ones that we've really saw that they really didn't need our support in terms of, we'll say, we realize that we need to refer and offer more support. We do try to constantly reach out to them and say, how far have you been with this one? You are set out to start a business. How's that going? Oh yeah, when we went through our curriculum of you end to end, you were writing a nice business plan. How far is that? Did you apply? Did you see there's an opportunity from EF where you can push in your application for funding? And also try to even bring those partners to the guys who's the application process and everything. But we do try to keep constant check of with our guys. It's a huge number. We cannot always reach out to everyone at the same time, but we do try our utmost best to do so.
I think niyenzaba lokhuluma ngayo ye-lifestyle. Ngifuna ukubutele ukuthi as nisakhulumisana nje with young men and young boys as well, ingabe leti nkinga tiyafana yini? Ngibekise nje mhlambe inkinga yemuntu lohlala la emadolobheni, inkinga takhe titawuhluka, mhlambe ufuna imali yekuphuma out nebangani, ufuna umsebenzi, but then inkinga yemuntu losemakhaya ude-stress, noma babe ude-stress kangako nje, but uba ne-stress ukuthi kulahleka inkomo yakhe noma bebe inkomo yakhe. Ingabe vele mhlambe leti nkinga rural areas nema urban areas tiyafana noma mhlambe nje tihlukile kukhona lokho kuhluka?
Yeah, they can never be the same. I think I'm lucky I've experienced a bit both from personal experience. You know, nangisekhaya ngakoko, this is another story. You know, they can never be the same. But more than anything, we encourage men to speak out, because the problems are different, but the end results are banana if you don't speak out. So we just encourage men to speak out, because in the suburbs, the burbs as we call them, my young boys will just have pressure to go and chill there by movies on. My young boys in the rural areas, they have pressure for another story. And another point that you bring, that the problems cannot be the same across age. Now, because adolescent boys, their problems are different. Young adults from 25 to 29, the problems are different. I mean, there are guys who are graduates who don't mind sitting at home because their parents are able to provide. That's mostly the guys in the urban areas. But then there are guys who are graduates now. The parents are looking up to them to actually be the providers. That's the guys in the rural, mostly the guys in the rural areas. So the problems cannot be the same. But then what you encourage guys, what you encourage a matcha to do, or men in general, is to always look for platforms to actually speak out. Yes.
Alright, so kuba yini nje mhlawumbe ama-interventions noma ama-programs la niwendako nje, for example mhlawumbe niba ne-interaction with ne-public, social media pages enu, niyaba-invite bobabe ukuthi bakhulume, kukhona into okunye mhlawumbe le nikwendako, to try and prevent leti nombole leti tema-suicide ukuthi tinyuke?
Yes, I think we don't have a really preventive measure program, right? But we have a support system to that through our psychosocial support officer, who works in Babane and Manzini respectively, since our offices are based in Babane and Manzini. So what she tries to do is to set up appointments. You call and set up an appointment. We would see if you want to reach, if you want to do or counseling services. I think that's one of the major things that we are doing right now. And most of all, we are trying very much so for men to unlearn those toxic stereotypes, these toxic masculinities. I think because all of these are just rooted in that, they're really relying on that, on those phenomena about toxic masculinity, toxic gender norms that we still have. So we're trying for men to unlearn that. But then should you not be in a stage now where you're really on the unlearning part, then the support social officer, psycho-support social officer will be really a great person for you to have a conversation with at this point. Yeah.
As you said, vele men carry a lot of burdens, kumele provide, and I think vele naloko bese kubabangela stress. Makatawushaya nje bekise nje the mother of the child, uyashaya sekudingeka lokhu, sekudingeka lokhu, sekudinga imali petrol, konke lokho lo muntu uyacabanga. So what can they do to keep their mentality in check?
That's very true. I think exercise, guys. Exercise. I always see people joking this, like, hey, what is this one doing? But once you try it, you just realize how refreshing it is. I tried it a few times, and then when I come back in the house, I'm tired, but also I'm refreshed. I do it in the morning before I go to work. I'm tired, a little bit tired. I take a shower, and then I'm refreshed. Exercise, and then also seek quality time with your friends and family. Quality, not quantity, guys. Quality time with your family. A time where you're being honest, having conversation with your family, with your friends. If you are a family man, quality time with your kids. Make them understand that, hey, Bafetu, that is no longer earning that much, is earning this much now. You don't necessarily need to divulge all the details, but make them understand that there's a huge adjustment coming your way, that we need to work together to be able to do this. And also seek out positive outlets of anger management techniques and everything. To seek out professional ways, especially on the anger management technique, guys. I think mostly anger, and the anger that's left unchecked is very dangerous. Anger management techniques, and also, guys, try to read more, inform yourself about mental health, and then, of course, seek out for help. But I just want to emphasize on try to educate yourself more. I think we haven't been really doing much civic engagement or education on mental health. So it's really important that you read out, try to find information, try to find out useful resources in Eswatini. Useful resources in Eswatini when it comes to mental health. The people that you can visit, should you be in a position, because I know we see to a national crisis center, and then you just have that fear goes they beat those who are not mentally unstable. But what we're trying to say, seek out and read. You'll find out there are actually more and more resources that are available for you out there as a person to cope in terms of mental health.
All right. So it's an NJ, he's working plan voter this year and reaching more men. As you said, kusini akona nekufinyelela to 10,000 men. Nangiyabe nibuke ukuthi indawo sebenza kanjani this year. Kuza manje kufinyelela kubonke bamfu besilisa nizama nje kubafundisa ukuthi kumele bende kanjani to take care of their mental health.
Thank you very much. I think what we are actually venturing more into advocacy and lobbying, because we need to, some of these issues, they just need to be out there. Advocate for change, be advocate of change. And then, of course, also working, not forgetting the grassroots engagements, because advocacy is out there, maybe on the macros nakunjen. But then on grassroots engagement, we're still going to engage more young men and boys using all our available resources that we have. It's either social media or physical engagement. Because guys, we are trying, if you follow our social media platforms, we are trying to reach out and to do campaigns that are focusing on unlearning all these phenomena, because we understand that Swaziland, yet people say it's quite a big country. We cannot be everywhere at the same time that we would love to be there. So we're going to keep working on grassroots. Right now, our chapter offices are at Kusile. That's where they can find us, in Machaha. And then, of course, they can come at our 2 offices in Manzini and Babane anytime, any day. They'll always find someone who will be happy to assist them, talk to them about whatever that they feel like they need to talk about at that given point in time. But we also appreciate media houses like you guys who give us this opportunity to actually talk about these issues. But what we want to do out there is to take the information to the people more than anything. And then, of course, as advocate for more healthy legal reforms in Eswatini and have programs that are influenced by research. We want to have dialogue with guys, research, so that we can have programs that are influenced by proper research. And that research will then help us to see how best to really engage men and boys in Eswatini.
All right, thank you so much, Bandile. Siyabonga ukuthi ube nathi on the show today, Mbukeli. Sothuveleke ukuthi inhlangano yakwakha imvotsa kunengile kwendako kuzama kufinyelela kubobabe and young boys. Babakhulumise ngetindzaba the mental health ezikubalekile ukuthi badade letindzaba leti njengoba nje sivetele ukuthi inombolo leshacisako 45 males committed suicide from January to date. Kanti lokhu kusho umbiko losuka khona emaphoyiseni. Mangabe kukhona lofuna ukuvaka abantu, you can contact them on their social media page, especially on Facebook, bayatholakala as Kwakha Invotsa. Let's take a break, start with a traffic update.
Lesi sikhathi lapho khona emaphoyisa agubha kuba khona kwawo even. Kulapho kukuthathwa khona sive ukuthi sike sihlale phansi sibuke bomcoka bemaphoyisa empilweni yabantu. Siphindze sibuke indlela letinsha tekuphepha kubo bonke bucala lobuveta sihloko. Sive sakangwane siyakhunjutwa ukuthi singawafaki emaphoyisa etinkulumeni tepolitiki ngoba liphoyisa alingeni futhi alingenelani nepolitiki. Emaphoyisa alwa nebucala netingoti temgwaco kuphela nje. Ingako emaphoyisa athi wonke umuntu eveni akahlale ngaphandle kwekunceneka ukuthi angahle ahlaselwe tilwane tasendle. Umuntu lohlala eSwatini akatiphilele atisebentele ngaphandle kwekwesaba kuhlaselwa kwemucwa nekucekelwa phansi kwempahla yakhe. Nawe wena lophathekile emaphoyisa athi digulele kahle uze uphile ngaphandle kwekuphatamiseka. Lokungenteka ngekuthi tidlova tingene tihlasele labo labakunakekelako kuleyo ndlu. Sive lesihlakaniphile nguleso lesiphakamisa kusebenta kwemaphoyisa nabo bonke labalwa nebucala. Ngale kwaloko timbungushe tiyawuwangenela emazinyane kungenamuntu ekhaya. Lo mlayeto niulethelwa ngemaphoyisa eMbube abambisene nomsakato wetithombe.
Welcome back. 5 minutes before 7. Lomhlekisani sitawubuka simo semgwaco na Constable Ntombenhle sikuvusele fakuthi ngabe kambeka kanjani lomhle emgwacweni.
Ngikuvusele Thombeni, ngivusele naye umbukeli wekusile breakfast show. Imigwaco elivela kangwane singikuthwe ngube nesive sesihlolile imigwaco iyahambeka singakhuthaza nje ukuthi bashayeli abanakethe impawu lesiphakanyisiwe emigwaqweni ikakhulu kwaDilitubane kwatise phela ukuthi ngilo esikhathini lesiningi lelivama lisibangele ingoti letimbi kakhulu sigcine selapho sebalimele khona kakhulu bantu nje asinakeni kakhulu impawu kuze kuthi siphephe sisawusebenzisa umgwaqo emadolobha elive ahloliwe idolobha lelikhulu laseMbabane tibane temgwaqo lesilapha kaKiya nawuqhamuka khona industrial site nasesibhedlela solo atisebenzi kahle siveta nje umbala lo hlata kuphela bese asawuveti lona lomthubi nalona lobovu sitaladi lesingi somhlolo road lesisuka khona edolobheni sibheke khona kuSport leso sitaladi solo sivaliwe siyakhuthaza abashayeli ukuthi abasebenzise letinye titaladi kuze kuthi bakhone ukufika kahle ekhathi edolobheni umgwaqo losuka khona ehekeni laseNgwenya ubheke khona kaManzini nawusuka lapha eceleni noma ke emkhathini waseSidwashini nakhona eMbabane lapha ngakacabala eMbadada kuneloli lapho lefele khona ekhathi emgwaqweni ivimbe umzila longasenqele kanti lapha kulikona lelicijile sithi nje bashayeli abanake kakhulu khona lapho kanti ke solo sikhona umgwaqo lomkhulu nawusuka emvutshini ukhuphukela eMbabane ungafiki kule off ramp leya khona emagesini nakhona lapho kuneloli levimbe umzila longasenqele sithi nje bashayeli abashayele ngalokukhulu ukucophelela kuleto tindzawo leto ekhathi edolobheni kaManzini sihlolile nakhona umgwaqo losuka khona eRimandi ungena khona ekhathi edolobheni solo kuyakhiwa nakhona lapho sithi nje bashayeli abanakisise kanti ke nawusuka kaManzini uya emafutheni kulesigamu nje nawusuka eMphandle uyafika lapha kuhelehele umzila lo takhona kaManzini sikadile khona lapho ukuthi sisebenzise umgwaqo itawuchubeka nanamuhla sivusetele wona emalayini sithi nje bashayeli abachubeke basibambise nato tisebenzise umgwaqo sisasebenza khona lapho lomunye umgwaqo lesiuhlolile umgwaqo losuka khona emsahweni ubheke khona eFteni lapha emayiwane eceleni kwalapha noma ke nawela umfula iNatal khona lapho kunemgodi lovulekile ekhathi emgwaqweni kwenta ukuthi imotolo tibe nebulukhuni khona lapho sithi nje letimpawu letibekiwe asitinakeni khona lapho kuze ukuthi bashayeli bangadikhanzi bangena khona ekhathi engotini ngale kwaloko Thombeni imigwaqo elivela kaNgwane iyahambeka ngaphandle nje kwaleti esenkishito tikhinyabeto kungaba kufisela yena umbukeli usuku loluhle naloluphephile basetawusebenzisa yona imigwaqo elivela kaNgwane.
Asibonga kakhulu Constable kusinike dala yombikelo mhla ekseni imbukela sibahlalete emakethe sitabuya sithathe tindzaba tetfu tangephandle. Good morning and welcome back. It's 7 o'clock. Let's take a look at international news. Malawi's president appealed on Wednesday for global support to tackle a national tragedy after Cyclone Freddy pummeled the southeast African nation, causing flooding and mudslides that have killed hundreds. The level of devastation we are dealing with here is greater than the resources we have at our disposal, President Lazarus Chakwera said in declaring 2 weeks of national mourning.
On Wednesday, President Chakwera attended a funeral for victims and announced that 2 weeks of mourning would begin. He said that the scale of the destruction is greater than the country can cope with alone.
Malawi is in a state of disaster. What Cyclone Freddy has done is to pull us back even when we were trying to rebuild because of past tragedies. And I appeal to the international community to please look at us with such favor because we need help. We need help in terms of people that have been rescued, who have lost everything, needing what is necessary: shelter, clothing, food.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken is the first top U.S. diplomat to visit Niger, as the West African country has emerged as a crucial security base for Western countries seeking to counter terrorist groups in the Sahel region.
Terrorist organizations like Boko Haram and Islamic State and branches of Al-Qaeda continue to pose a threat to Niger and governments across sub-Saharan Africa. This is the aftermath of an attack last week in neighboring Nigeria, where militants in Borno State killed at least 37 fishermen. Amid regional security concerns, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken chose to visit Niger. In a joint news conference with his Nigerian counterpart in Niamey, Blinken announced nearly $150 million in humanitarian assistance to help meet the tremendous need in Western and Central Africa and the Sahel created by regional instability. Blinken had this to say on the scourge of extremist violence.
We are also supporting investments in the long-term security of Niger, investments that you heard the minister refer to, help make Niger's law enforcement more effective in combating terrorism, strengthening border security, enhancing counter-narcotics capacity, stemming trafficking, helping to investigate, prosecute, and ultimately reduce terrorism, violent extremism.
During the visit, Blinken highlighted Niger's democratic government and its efforts to help its young people break free from the pull of extremist groups. One expert told VOA he was not surprised that Blinken had decided to visit Niger after his visit to Ethiopia.
Again, Niger is a linchpin right now towards stability in the Sahel. And it has done significantly better than its neighbors. It has a more democratic government. Remember that in Mali and Burkina Faso, we've seen military coups. And so you have great governance turmoil in those countries. Niger is an island of stability in comparison.
Niger is one of the world's poorest countries and desperately needs more humanitarian aid to help nurses, like this one in the remote northern village of Sulufeta, who have no equipment and no drugs to treat patients. Blinken said the new fund for Central Africa will provide for shelter, food, safe drinking water, and sanitation, while also supporting vulnerable refugees and asylum seekers evacuated to Niger from neighboring countries. Blinken praised the people of Niger's generosity for taking in refugees. Cindy Sain, VOA News.
Greek police fired tear gas and protesters hurled firebombs on Thursday as more than 40,000 people took to the streets to slam the government and voice outrage at last month's train disaster that killed 57 people.
Sinderma Square explodes into a flurry of clashes as protesters and police meet head-on. Greek anger boiled over on Thursday in the latest response to late February's head-on train collision that killed 57 people.
We are here to join students, parents, teachers and workers. We demand that the crime is not covered up and that the culprits are revealed.
Thousands of workers had earlier descended onto the streets of Athens, joining a 24-hour strike called by Greece's largest labor unions. Flights to and from the country were grounded, ships remained docked, and public services and state schools were closed. The train accident has put Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis' government on the defensive, with revelations of serious transport safety gaps emerging.
There are workers in all of the sectors whose rights are constantly under attack. Government doesn't even hesitate to sacrifice safety for the sake of business.
Mitsotakis has vowed full cooperation with the judicial inquiry and to modernize the transport system. But there's still much convincing to do.
I don't believe anything they say. Did the accident have to happen for them to do something?
Regaining favor may prove a tough task before parliamentary elections this spring. Opinion polls this week have shown the ruling Conservatives' lead shrink by almost half compared to those published before the crash.
Israeli protesters returned to the streets on Thursday to rally against proposed judicial reforms after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu rejected a compromise plan touted by the country's president. The reforms, several provisions of which have already been adopted by Parliament, are the end of democracy.
A convoy of cars heading in the direction of Tel Aviv's Ben Gurion airport. These Israelis have a message for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who is expected in Germany on Thursday.
We won't forget them. They are trying to bring fascism to our country. We will never give up. We will fight to our last drop of blood.
Bad. On Tuesday, the controversial bill passed its first reading in Israel's parliament. Should it become law, it would allow legislators to overrule Supreme Court decisions by a simple majority vote. For President Isaac Herzog, it's a threat to the foundations of democracy. Alarmed at the increasingly fractious turn the country has taken, Herzog, whose role is ceremonial, has intervened and proposed a more consensual reform, on which he had been working for several weeks.
The proposed outline anchors a decent and balanced relationship between the authorities that allows each authority to fulfill its role and operate within the limits of its jurisdiction without unusual interferences from another authority.
But the proposal was quickly rebuffed by Benjamin Netanyahu, whose flight to Berlin was delayed by several hours.
Unfortunately, the issues the president proposed were not approved by the coalition representatives, and the main parts of his proposals will only worsen the current situation and cannot guarantee the balance needed between the authorities in Israel. This is the unfortunate truth.
Since the reform to the judicial system was announced in early January by the most right-wing government in Israel's history, large-scale protests have taken place throughout the country. But that has not deterred Netanyahu, who has been indicted in a number of corruption cases. The Prime Minister's detractors say he may use the proposed law to see off future legal troubles of his own.
Uncollected rubbish mounted in the streets of Paris on Wednesday, and hundreds of thousands of people marched in last-gasp protest against French President Emmanuel Macron's pension reform, which is said to be before Parliament. A rolling strike by municipal garbage collectors in the capital has seen an estimated 7,000 tons of trash pile up unsightly mounds, attracting wraths and dismaying tourists.
As Parisian rubbish collectors continue to strike, their absence is keenly felt in the capital. On some streets in Paris, it's necessary to weave in and out of the rubbish bags that have piled up. Despite the eyesore and the smell, many residents support the strikers.
I don't mind at all, because if there is one profession that deserves to retire early because of working conditions, it's rubbish collectors. So let them go on striking as long as they need to. There's no problem. We'll manage.
We support the strikes, but it's a strike that smells bad.
The rubbish is piling up in front of this supermarket, and the problems continue inside. Boxes stacked in the aisles with nowhere to go. More than 7,000 tons of rubbish are currently lying on the streets of Paris. The city's mayor, who supports the strike movement, has refused to requisition bin men. So the government have taken matters into their own hands.
Tomorrow morning at the latest, the head of police will carry out requisitions in the name of public health, and I think that all Parisians, no matter what they think of the pension reforms, will be happy.
However, Strikers warn that even if requisitioned, they will refuse to work.
They can requisition me, but to do what? They will make me do what? To go out? I'll go out, but that's it.
I can tell you clearly that if they requisition me, the truck will barely get started. The engine will stay cold. I will go at my own pace. I'm the driver, so I set the pace.
With the unions voting to continue the strike until next Monday at the earliest, the rubbish will continue to pile up on the streets of Paris.
France's showdown over a bill raising the retirement age from 62 to 64 heads towards a climax on Thursday, either via parliamentary vote or through a special presidential move to force it through the legislature. The Senate adopted the bill on Thursday morning in a 193-114 vote, a tally that was largely expected since the Conservative majority of the upper house of parliament favors a higher retirement age. The bill now moves to the lower house, the National Assembly, where its fate is uncertain.
Emmanuel Macron's pension reform bill hangs in the balance. For the French president and his government, there's a first ideal scenario, that the bill jumps through its parliamentary hurdles today. In the upper house, it's likely a shoe-in due to a conservative majority. But where this ideal scenario for Macron gets tricky is the lower house's afternoon vote. Many MPs are still hesitating. Even the government admits just a few votes could swing this one way or another. If given the green light by the National Assembly, the pension reforms would become law, even if the opposition on the left has vowed to challenge it before the Constitutional Council. Scenario 2 is if, at the last minute, the reform's future remains too uncertain. Then the Prime Minister could ram the legislation through by using a parliamentary maneuver called the 49-3. It is deeply unpopular, and forcing it through would open the door for the opposition to propose a vote of no confidence. And it would expose Macron and Elizabeth Borne to accusations of flouting democracy. The third scenario is Macron's nightmare and protesters' dream come true, that the proposal is rejected outright. If that were to happen, a no vote would rattle Macron's legacy and propel his second term into a period of political turbulence and uncertainty.
Hoping to assuage fears of a banking crisis, Credit Suisse says it would exercise an option to borrow nearly $54 billion from the central bank. This makes it the first major global bank to be given an emergency lifeline since the 2008 financial crisis.
Investors are on edge as shares in banking giant Credit Suisse have plummeted to a record low after its biggest backer said it cannot provide additional financial assistance. Stocks of Switzerland's second largest bank slumped by as much as 30%, recovering slightly to close down 25% at the end of the session.
Credit Suisse is too big to fail. This is once again setting alarm bells ringing in the financial markets and causing dramatic losses. This bank is of a different order of magnitude than the US banks that were closed most recently. It is systematically important for Switzerland, but also very significant internationally.
Investors took to their heels after its biggest single shareholder, Saudi National Bank, announced it would halt any further funding due to regulatory reasons that limit its stake to 10%. The fallout spilled over for other European banks, with losses of over 10% for French and German neighbours Société Générale, BNP Paribas and Deutsche Bank. Markets were already on tenterhooks after last week's collapse of two mid-sized US banks, Silicon Valley Bank and Signature, in what marks the biggest failure since the 2008 financial crisis.
There's been a reassessment of risk in the banking sector following the problems in the United States last week, and there's sort of contagion, not because they had any connection with Credit Suisse, but because investor sentiment changed and people were scrutinizing other banks more carefully, and Credit Suisse is seen as the weakest link, if you like.
Credit Suisse, however, insists its position is not a concern. The European Central Bank is due to meet Thursday and is likely to address the instability in the banking sector.
The Netherlands woke up to a political earthquake on Thursday after a farmers' protest party won key elections, throwing the government's environmental policies into doubt. The populist Farmer Citizen Movement, which was only set up 4 years ago, is said to be the biggest party in the Dutch Senate with 15 seats.
unbridled joy for Caroline van der Plas as her party shook up the Dutch political landscape on Wednesday evening. Founded just 4 years ago, the BBB is now projected to be the largest party in the Senate.
This could mean we will be the biggest party in the Netherlands. This isn't normal, not normal. Well, actually, I do find it normal, but I never expected it.
The elections that took place were provincial, but they also indirectly decide the makeup of the country's national Senate. The BBB, or Farmer Citizen Movement, is projected to be the largest party in the Senate, with 15 out of 75 seats. The same amount as the Labour Party and Dutch Green Party coalition. Prime Minister Mark Rutte's party, VVD, is predicted to go down from 12 to 10 seats. And according to Van der Plas, this will make the governing coalition take her party seriously.
What does this mean for the coalition in the Senate? They already had a small majority, but now it's reduced to almost nothing. That means they have to start negotiating with BBB seriously.
The BBB have rallied against the government's environmental policies since its formation in 2019, especially the government's aims to cut nitrogen emissions in half. The BBB says the problem has been exaggerated and that proposed solutions are unfairly balanced against farmers, leading to the closure of many farms. The Prime Minister conceded that it was a tough night for his party.
The VVD is now down 0.5% in the exit poll. We go from 13.3% to 12.8%. That's not the win we wanted. We lost a little bit, 0.5%.
Rutte's government, in its fourth consecutive term since 2010, has dropped to a 20% approval rating, its lowest in a decade.
Confirmed Wednesday that U.S. officials have recommended the popular video sharing app part ways with its Chinese parent ByteDance to avoid a national ban.
It's an ultimatum for ByteDance, the Chinese owner of TikTok. Sell up or risk being banned in the US. The White House has made no secret of its fears that the popular video sharing app could pose a national security risk by collecting information from its millions of users, such as their location or biometric data. Washington believes that this information could be shared with Chinese authorities, but TikTok argues a change of ownership is not the solution and proposes keeping US user data within the United States with third-party monitoring. The Trump administration tried to ban the app in 2020, but was blocked by the courts. But the saga didn't end there, with the Biden administration now holding a similar line.
TikTok, poses a problem and an issue. And so we have concerns about that as it relates to Americans' data, collecting Americans' data, and the potential national security risk. And we've been very, very clear on that.
At the end of last month, the president gave government employees 30 days to delete the app from any federal devices, with similar bans in place in Canada as well as EU institutions. And last week, a bipartisan bill introduced in the US Senate, which could pave the way to a full-on ban. But TikTok insists that the app and its owner are private actors, calling for evidence to support suspicions.
But it's easy for them to pick TikTok as the target, and they use us as the political football. So what we're asking is judge us on these facts rather than on your fears.
Beijing has accused TikTok critics of exaggerating the threat posed by the app in a bid to suppress Chinese companies.
Still on TikTok, CEO Shou Zi is scheduled to testify before the U.S. House Committee on Energy and Commerce on March 23rd.
TikTok CEO Shou Zi is expected to face questions from U.S. lawmakers about the Chinese-owned app's privacy and data security practices, child safety policies, and ties to the Chinese Communist Party. At an earlier hearing on security threats, Senator Marco Rubio asked FBI Director Christopher Wray about TikTok's parent company, ByteDance, which is headquartered in Beijing.
Could the Chinese government, through its ownership of ByteDance, that owns ByteDance US, if they wanted to, and ByteDance US were willing to cooperate or forced to cooperate, could they use TikTok to control data on millions of users?
Yes.
Could they use it to control the software on millions of devices, given the opportunity to do so?
Yes.
So they can collect our data, manipulate information, poison the minds, and feed garbage into the minds of millions of people and so forth. This is a substantial national security threat for the country of a kind that we didn't face in the past.
TikTok executives like public policy communications head Brooke Oberwetter say they are addressing U.S. security concerns.
First and foremost, the Chinese government has never asked TikTok for U.S. user data. We have never provided them U.S. user data, nor would we if they asked us to. All of our data is now routed through the Oracle Cloud infrastructure, where it's kept in a secure environment that is managed by our U.S. data security team.
Heritage Foundation researcher Jake Denton says having TikTok on your phone is like carrying around a personal surveillance balloon.
This application is a wolf in sheep's clothing. The app is uniquely capable of surveilling and collecting mass amounts of data. There's also a great deal of Chinese propaganda. There's a great deal of data collection, and it just creates a massive vulnerability for ordinary Americans and our government.
In December, TikTok was banned on federally owned devices. Some states, including Texas and Mississippi, have also moved to restrict the app. But researcher James Lewis says a complete ban is unlikely.
Unfortunately, for the people who want to ban TikTok, the Constitution doesn't allow them to do that. Texas has the authority to say you can't use it on a state-owned device, you can't use it at work on a state network, but you can't tell people what to do in their private lives.
Congress is considering bipartisan legislation that would give President Joe Biden power to ban any foreign-based technology that poses a national security threat. Dina Mitchell for VOA News.
The big puffy white moon suits worn by Neil Armstrong and his fellow Apollo astronauts a half-century ago are out of fashion. Lunar haute couture now calls for something more form-fitting and appropriate for men and women alike.
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
When astronauts first stepped onto the moon in 1969, they stumbled into the history books wearing suits that were bulky and inflexible. Fast forward to 2025 with a major refresh to the wardrobe for the crew of the Artemis 3 mission to the lunar surface.
There's a variety of joints that we've put as well into the lower torso assembly, and this is going to be a huge improvement over the Apollo suits. The Apollo suits didn't have many of these types of joints.
NASA spent 15 years updating the suits, then turned over the design to the aerospace company Axiom Space to complete the job. A new helmet has improved visibility. The boots are designed especially for moonwalking, and a backpack provides mobile life support. Thermal protection is also a key component as the crew will travel to the moon's south pole, where temperatures can plummet to negative 170 degrees Celsius. NASA says an update was badly needed, with astronauts returning to the moon and maybe eventually to Mars.
We have not had a new suit since the suits that we designed for the space shuttle, and those suits are currently in use on the space station.
Artemis 3 will take the first woman to the moon, and designers are still making finishing touches to the suits, which are made to fit both male and female astronauts. They say the prototype is dark in color for now, but the outer layer will return to the original white for the Artemis mission, made of mylar and Kevlar to protect the astronauts from extreme temperatures. Down to the last detail, making sure the crew is dressed for success.
In a February visit to Sudan, the head of the UN World Food Programme said 75% of the country's farmland goes unused, but with the help of investors, Sudan can go from receiving food aid to exporting food.
A video from United Nations World Food Programme Executive Director David Beasley has sparked debate online over whether Sudan could indeed boost output from its unused arable land.
This is a country that has 210 million acres of arable land, and only 25% of it is being used. But if we can get the private sector in here, working with the smallholder farmers, while we can grow the food we need, not just feed just Sudan, but actually feed the whole world.
Last month, Sudan saw record levels of food insecurity, according to the UN. The idea that it could feed itself and other countries in a region struggling not only with droughts, but also with grain shortages caused by the conflict in Ukraine might seem far-fetched. Experts tell VOA that making use of the unused land is more complicated than Beasley implies.
My first reaction to the video was that it sounded like if the solution is straightforward and is simple. And from my experience, I think the issues are more complex and more nuanced than that.
He went on to cite the need for better infrastructure and better regulation. Financial transactions from abroad are also difficult because of the sanctions on the country. Some investing in Sudan told VOA that risk due to political instability are also a problem. While the United Arab Emirates and China have invested, the risk profile for Western companies is too high, they said. For their part, smallholder farmers say they would welcome any investment. Ahmed Salam Mohammed Al-Helu says it would transform his business.
If you gave me money, I would expand my business. If I had enough money, I would plant vegetables that were impossible for me before. I'd buy new land.
Abdullah Mohammed El Amin, a retired agricultural scientist turned smallholder, says private sector investment could bring big benefits.
Farmers here used to do something as they know, their knowledge is not sufficient. But if they find an investment, they will follow the right way and they will do better.
It is up to the government to make legislative reforms, says Yahya Omar Adam, director of the Institute of Environmental Studies at the University of Khartoum. He says some neighbouring countries have managed to do that well.
We have a good example of our neighbour Ethiopia. I think there is external or internal investment in agriculture, and they are very successful. I think that is a good lesson for us to learn.
Functions of the state in Sudan are said by experts to be at a standstill as a military junta that took power in 2021 keeps a stranglehold on power while showing little interest in governing. Henry Wilkins for VOA News, Khartoum, Sudan.
It's 28 minutes after 7. We've come to the end of our international news. After the break, we'll be speaking to Miss Cultural Heritage, Lindelwa Amazia. Stay with us.
Why should we pay our TV license?
The content on our local television is actually more up to date. The industry is enhanced.
It is a criminal offense not to pay your TV license and attracts a fine of 500 emalangeni or 6 months imprisonment.
And the industry is definitely blooming, ladies and gentlemen. So that's what we have for you. But we'll be right back just after the break and we'll give you more of Miss V.
Pay my TV license. That's why I can enjoy the benefits of an enhanced industry and keep track with recent transformation.
Mommy, who paid for a TV license and what are they paying for?
The owners of TV set and a gadget with a tuner like DVD set have to pay.
Pay your TV license at NetBank with the details provided on screen. Or use your cell phone via the mobile money Pay. You could also visit your nearest post office and pay there. Pay your TV license via Eswatini Mobile Imali. Any TV device retailer can purchase a license to trade. Pay your TV license and enhance the industry. Welcome back. You're still watching Kusile Breakfast. Kusile now on this beautiful Friday morning. The past 2 weeks we have been speaking to our
Queens. Sicela sakhulumisana na Miss Eswatini, sakhulumisana na Miss Ecotourism. Today we have Miss Cultural Heritage Lindelwa Mazia, who is a 22-year-old ufunda ke eNyuvesi yaseSwatini, and she is studying journalism and media. Good morning and welcome, Jansis. Yeah. All right. So you're studying journalism at University of Eswatini. Just briefly tell us about yourself. Ukuthi ungubani Lindelwa usuka kuphi nje?
Okay, Lindelwa yimfombatana letithandzako utsandza bantfu ngiqhamuka eStake. Yes, ngiyimfombi yaseBonjeni. And ngiyakujabulela ukuthi ngayikhona kuthola lesicoco noko ngiwale khashane lena yabahlezi basho bathi sicoco sipholwa bampu manzini imbabane kulukhuni ukuthi sifikele emaqiniselweni akithi.
Wafika njani nje ukuthi nawe ufuna kuba part of i-competition yaleli hlobo, and what ubone ukuthi vele dawugcina sewuwinile Miss Cultural Heritage?
Well, kwaba angathi ngayibeka kanjani because ekuqaleni ngangijoinele Miss Eswatini. Yes, so ke ngathi nangakhona ingena ka top 10 ya Miss Eswatini ke, then ngase sengibona space ka Miss Cultural ngathi asengizame ngibona ukuthi ngabe ngaphuma ini.
Okay. So ufundzela journalism khona University of Eswatini. How is that going? And how did you choose that career ukuthi wena nje ufuna nje ukufundela tifundvo temthatheli?
Well, ekuqaleni bekungaziso sifiso sami. Ngidawuthi ngagayidwa ama result ukuthi ngigcine ngifike ka journalism.
So how's it going so far? You enjoying
so
the
far,
course?
ngijabulile nje nami bengacabanga ukuthi ngingayijabulela kasona i-journalism njengoba sengi-enjoy njengamanje. It's just something lebengayicabangi, and so far I'm doing good.
All right. So I want us to get into your role as Miss Cultural Heritage. You know, so now what are your duties? What are your main duties, and have you been able to execute them? Also, you have to do my duties as the Queen, Miss Cultural Heritage.
My duties as Miss Culture. Siyathi sonke ukuthi kwamele ngibe i-ambassador ye-culture, kumele ngigcugcutele live ukuthi likhumbule phela emasiko liphindze liwagcine. Noko ngisesikolweni ngiyajabula ukuthi ngiyakhona ukwenza lokho ngoba nginaso schedule sami ngibaniketile art and culture bayathi ukuthi ngemalanga la ngikuthi Lindelwa angekakhona ukuphumelela kufika kuphi, kepha ngemalanga la ngikuthi uyakhona ukuthi afike lana. So nangabe khona bangidzinga khona bacale babuka ukuthi ngabe vele Lindelwa esikolweni ubhizi kanganani, bese ke sengikhathi ke bayasho ukuthi angakhona Queen kufika kuphi na ngilanga lelingoti.
Okay, so when you assumed this position ngiyathemba lokuthi bekwabane defiso namaphupho ama-projects nje labofisa ukuwenda ukuthi Miss Cultural ngifisa ukuthi kwenda nabo ngifisa ukuvakashela lana ngifisa kwenda lokho nalokho. Have been able to do that nje solo work round last year?
Yes, sengikhonile ngitimvo sengivele ngiqalile ngiyadenda. Siyakhona siyahamba sivashele tikolwa, especially ngemalanga ema-culture days siyafika. Nje nangikhana kwasifiso sami ukuthi ngikhone kuhlala phansi nensha ngikhulumisane nayo kabanti ngebumcoka bemasiko ngoba lesikhathi lesikiso sesihambe kakhulu kangangoba bamfa basawubona bumcoka bekukhuluma Swati bumcoka bemvunulo sebeva wangazi ukuthi sidzala kanti akuseyiqiniso phela lelokho. Singachubeka netechnology yethu kephana sibe sabuka emuva solo savunula solo sakhuluma Swati njengoba singemaswati. Yebo ke so nyalo ke ngisaphishanekile ngihlela timvo tami kahle kuze ngidawukhona kwenda lelihlelo lwami nensha sicocisane kabanti ngalendzaba.
Yeah, so ucela ukuxoxisana nabo labanye nje.
Ngingasho ukuthi because la ngifundza khona sinebamfincumbi, so kuyendeka ngihambe nabo ngihlale nabo ngisebenza bonye sikhulume. Nangivundlile ekakhulu ngoba nangivundlile ngilapho ngibafola khona kakhulu bonke bambu bayangibuka wena uvundlile so ke bese sengithola lesifuba lesikahle ukuthi ngingakhuluma nabo ngaleso sikhathi.
Okay, so bayabathini nje athini ama-views abo njengoba ushide ukuthi vele wena kahle uyabakhumbuta nje bomgcoka bekuthi ba-preserve amasiko abo bangayilahli imvunulo bangalahli ilwimi labo bayabathini nje mhlambe nacoca nabo because siyababona abantu abasha labaningi sebaningi kakhulu ngalabo social media ingabe vele mhlambe bayabathini nje nococisana nabo.
Ngihlangane nedingcinamba uyabona lo munye umuntu nje uva lokuthi lokuvunula vele yena uva kwangazi ukuthi vele impilo yabo gogo akusiyo nje ukuthi ngikusiwa kahle ukuthi umpromosha nje angabonakala vele asemahiyeni beva kwangazi ukuthi nje akusiyimpilo letabayisa embili.
Okay, so wena ufuna ukushintsha kanjani lokho? Yini nje mhlambe inhlelo takho lo so diplanile kubuka lokho ukuthi vele bambu solo banalomcomvo loyo yini wena lofuna kuyenda kuzama ukushintsha le mentality leyo lesinayo?
Ngenhlanhla yami ngimpombatana nami lefundzile and ngisachubeka ngiyafunza. Lokho ke kuyangisita lokho ukuthi ke ngibatshengise ukuthi akudzingakala ukuthi ngize ngihlale emakhaya ngihlale nagogo kuze ngitawukhona kuvunula noma ngathiwa nami ngilapha emvasi ngiyakhona kuvunula ngifane nabo bonke bamfu ngiqhubeke ngeklasini ngifunze ngihambe ngiye edolobheni ngaphandle kwenkinga.
Okay, so I tell you had visited one of my high schools. Was it the primary school or my high school eduze? So ibe kanjani nje experience yakho khona ufike wendani bathini bambana were they excited to see you yini nje mhlambe emagama lamcoka lobashiye nawo?
Ngeshwa bengihambe nemphathi kube sesekuba nguyelo bese uthatha sihlwele sonke ngase angisakhona ke kubeka emagama lamancane.
Okay, but nje lokubonile nje lokukhuthatile nawe mhlawumbe lokuhambelana namasiko lwimi lwethu kukhona yini lokunotisile nje usesekhona kulesikole?
Angisho ukuthi ngijabule kakhulu ngeduze high school. Part of the cash labatendile itolo netinkhondlo tabo lebe batisho itolo betingemasiko. Bakhuluma bamphana ukuthi sesicela emasiko sicela ukuthi emasiko efu angasilahlekele etandleni tethu sisekhona siseyinsha sesibonile bakhona labadzala labangasikhomba lendlela sicela ukuthi sichubekeni nathi silasikolweni siwabambe emasiko.
Okay, so athini nje ma-plans akho lindela as ucalile umnyaka going forward usesikolweni and also you have to execute your duties mhlambe nje lamanye ama-plans akho that are in the pipeline ofisa ukuwenda as the reigning queen ya Miss Cultural Heritage?
Yes, ngiva buhlungu ukuthi emavikini noma emalangeni laphelile emaphephandaba ayakhuluma saqalile kusho ukuthi ligciwane lembulala selisibuyele kaMadima even. Bekusifiso sami ukuthi njenge-queen yaka art and culture Miss Cultural ngikhone ukusebenzisa loku ngikhone kuhlanganisa insha ngiphinze ngihlanganise nalendzaba yembulalave kuze sikhone ukuchamuka nezizumbululu ukuthi siyinsha nemasiko kungahambisana njani lokho kuze sikhone kulwa nayimvo lesibhekene nayo inyalo njengesive ngoba leli gciwane leli liyinkodi and ngiyathemba ukuthi emasiko njengoba sathi ukuthi vele ngelisiko impombatana nendlela kumele itiphathe ngayo so uma sesibuyisa lamasiko sitawukhona ukuthi silwe lendzaba yanangibulala vele sosivelele phinza.
Okay, so uyazama yini mhlambe kuzama kuhambisa leyo mlayito loyo mhlambe kubekisa kubo social media bakho kuzama nje ku-interact nje with the public kuzama nje kuhambisa those important messages?
Kulamalanga nje yimfo lengibhizi ngayo ngicathi ngeliphelele iviki nje ngingakhulumi nabo ku-social media because before ngaphambi kokuthi ngikhokhe impemvulo thite noma umbono thite ku-social media kukhona lekumele ecele ngikwente ngitawukhona kwadi ukuthi lele ngikhokhako vele kutawufike kuwente leli hloso lengiyigathile.
So ufuna ukubuda nje elindele ukuthi what some of your challenges mhlambe because the position lokiyo kumele ukuthi vele nawo ugcine isizotha sakho uhlalo umphana lophethe kahle bamfana bakubona emigwaqweni bavusele kahle so ingabe vele mhlambe what comes with the title ingabe vele mhlambe le sisenza kangakanani mhlambe langasho kanjalo akhona yini ama challenges loyo uhlangabezana nawo
angeke ngize ngicambe manga siyasenza lesi sicocele ngiso you know noma uhamba nje emgaqweni bese bahlezi babukile ukuthi wena vele uhamba nabani yini imvolo tentako mele uhlezi nje nice to people because waqala asesithi nje umfu uyangivosela kwake kwendeka sometime wafika wangivosela lona body ngangamuva ngebhadi yami wabuya wathi nasangivusela wangivusela savusa ngedlame asathi ke chavela angeniso iqueen sesitawuthini so bamfu bese bagadza ngazo ukuthi sengingahlale nginake bona sale ngikhohlwa ngale yami impilo nami bengathi nje ngicabangela I'm thinking ake kwase sekuyendeka
but bakukhona mhlambe kuloko ukutifundisa ukuthi ukhona kubaphendvula abamfu kahle ungabaphendvule mhlapha
ngenhlanhla yami ngaphiwa lokho
alright so mhlambe sisiya nje ngasekugcineni ilindela kufuna kuva nje ukuthi as you should ukuthi vele ufisa wona ama projects lamanye lamanengi kuzama kuhlanganisa abantu abasha nikhuluma kamandi ngendaba zabantu HIV and AIDS ingabe ufisa ukusekelwa noma ufisa kulekelelwa kanjani mhlambe inhlangano netinkampani letingakhona ukusita as execute le project yakho leyo
inhlangano vele impela ngingalijabulela lisito liqhamuka kibo njengoba ngitawukhona ngidawudzinga vele imali lenengi ukuthi ngihamba hambe tikolwa netikolwa ema community onke ngiwagcugcutela mele ngisina ngihamba ngiya kulawo ma community noma leto tikolwa ngihambe nami ngiphethe lokuthe lokuncane lekutawukhona ukuthi sisaxoxisana babe nabo basesenayi attention kuloko lengikoshoko
okay sedinga itikolo tovakashela
Timbili.
Yes. Okay. Alright, so all the best Lindela sabanga kakhulu ukuthi benathi sesema ukuthi ama projects akho onke ataba impumelelo bese ikhulumisana na Miss Cultural Heritage Lindela Maziya Miss Cultural Heritage kelona wa 2022-2023 bese ixoxisana naye njengabantu ama projects akhe lafise kuwenda asese ngiyo lesikhundla lesi. Let's take a break nasibuya sitabuka temidlalo. Welcome back. So bukela hlelo Kusile Breakfast Show sikuvusele nawo losanza kusivulela kulesikhathi sidabuka donate temidlalo lebitendeka kuleli viki naleto letawendeka kule mphela somvo. We have our sports journalist Fabrice Musonera. Good morning and welcome Fabrice.
Beautiful morning Lulu. Once again what a day it is and
yes, I think singaqala nje ngenzaba velele I think isematheni this week FIFA president Gianni being elected again to be president for his second term. I think we can talk more about that ukuthi vele kukhona mhlambe vele lishintsho latolenda utawusebenza kanjani nje mawubuka nje.
Yeah, I think around. Maybe just that's a good question because the biggest now element to touch on that is that he was actually elected unopposed because since his term was over, no one came out saying, I want to be a candidate, I want to run for presidency. So he was just elected unopposed. And I think for him, if you look at maybe where we're heading, this was during the 73rd FIFA Congress that for the very first time was held, in Rwanda, in the capital city, Kigali, where I think president of federations were saying, you know what, we trust in what you've done. We're looking at the process. There is more now tournaments being involved, even on African soil. Even though at a bigger stage, people will be like, FIFA, there's always corruption involved, which is something you can never end. But coming back to your question, can he now make it a better world in terms of football industry? I think he's trying to take us there. He's now changed the number of national teams that involved in the World Cup. Remember, in the 2026 now, we won't have the 32 teams no more that we're used to. We'll have more more national teams in the 2026 World Cup. These are some of the changes. You look at now the excitement that is behind the FIFA Women World Cup that is going to be hosted in New Zealand and Australia later this year. So those are some of the things that you would want to expect them, to change. So, in my opinion, if maybe there was a candidate, we could have said, let's see what he can offer. But since no one was there just to, to oppose him. So, why not? He deserves the post. So
4 years again.
Yeah, 4 years again
okay.
until 2027. Let's see what it can do for the world and for the football fraternity at large.
Okay, so moving along to the Europa League quarterfinalists and also the Champions League quarterfinalists. Can you talk about that?
I think for the UEFA Champions League, for me, there were no much surprises. If you look at how, remember that this week we're playing the second leg of the Champions League. Last week we're playing the first leg. So this week we're playing the first leg. So these are some of the teams that have qualified. If you look at FC Bayern Munich defeating Paris Saint-Germain in 2 legs, you look at down there Manchester City, just a bump of goals against RB Leipzig. You look at AC Milan down there in the center, also defeating Tottenham. You look at Napoli from Italy defeating Eintracht Frankfurt. On top of the Chelsea picking up form also in the Champions League against Borussia Dortmund. And then you have got Inter Milan. You've got also Benfica, the team in the second row at the top with the stars on top. Benfica being from Portugal. And then you look at also Real Madrid. I think these are the powerhouse of this tournament, the defending champions, Napoli. So for me, if you have these 8 teams into the last 8, and then obviously you've got now 2 English teams, you've got 2 Italian teams, you've got 1 German team, 1 Spanish team, and 1 Portuguese team. So it's what you can expect. What a quarterfinal is going to be. And I think we're, of course, expecting for a draw to see how these teams are going to line up against each other. Beautiful lineups.
So that is the Champions League and Europa.
Yeah. Yes,
okay.
That's Champions League. This is the Europa now, which I think surprises we saw last night. A team of Arsenal magnitude, of course, losing against Sporting of Portugal. But look at the teams that have made it into the last 8. We've got Feyenoord from Netherlands. We've got Juventus. We've got also Bayern Leverkusen from Germany. We've got Manchester United, AS Roma. We've got Sevilla. These are the powerhouse of the tournament. I think at some point they won it 3 times in a row under the former coach Unai Emery at the Sporting Lisbon. Some people were actually saying Nai Green Mamba, so they say Arsenal. Now I would say the green and white from Portugal. And then also we've got also the other teams. So these are the 8 teams that have made it. For me, having only 1 team from England, I would say maybe quite surprising for Arsenal not to make it. But once again, I'm giving to teams like Juventus. There is also Sevilla, the powerhouse, and the Manchester United. So once again, another cracker of fixtures expected in the Europa League. Once again, there's a draw expected where we'll have teams and see how they'll be lining up into the last 8.
Okay, so now let's see the powerhouses from the English Premier League fixtures. Yeah,
if you look at now, for a team like Arsenal after being defeated last night, then you have to say their next expectation is to see what they're going to be doing over the weekend. So maybe just to start on top of the screen, as you can see, Liverpool-Fulham game, of course, has been postponed. But I'm looking at now, if you just look at on the right side of the screen down, there's Manchester City, also West Ham, also another game that has been postponed. But I think the bigger picture now goes for the log leaders, Arsenal, when on Sunday at 4 p.m., which is exactly our local time, and they take on Crystal Palace. I would say it's quite of a mini derby where both teams, of course, come from London. I would have also to expect that after the defeat last night, this is something that can, work on and extend their lead, with the hope that once that game against West Ham, Manchester City is postponed. So once you've extended your lead, they'll be playing under pressure. So for Chelsea, if you see also on the right side of the screen against Everton, Chelsea, they're picking up form slowly. We've seen what they did against Dortmund in the Champions League. They came up, they defeated Leeds United. They have started to pick up form. So, I'm expecting maybe to do something. Once again, Brighton, Manchester United, another exciting game, but was also mentioned that was possible. So for me, this league, after maybe you've had 5 days of work, of anything, once you enter the weekend, there's always high expectation to say, what can we expect from these teams? But for me, this is for a chance for a team like Arsenal to extend their lead.
Okay, so what exciting games can we expect? Just moving along on the Spanish fixture, what exciting games can we expect from?
Yeah, when you
the
talk
league?
about the Spanish league, what is quite exciting is that it's a two race, for the both biggest teams in the Spanish capital, in the Spanish league. You talk about Barcelona and Real Madrid. So if you look at also teams like maybe Atletico Bilbao against Villarreal, these are some of the things that you can expect to begin your weekend. But we have to go down there at the bottom of the screen on the right side to say Barcelona are the new cup against Real Madrid. The difference really is not huge between the two sides. So for Madrid, if they want to catch up, if they want to keep the race on, if they want to give themselves a chance, remember, for them they still have Champions League. Barcelona, they're out of Champions League, they're out of Europa League. So this is their chance to say we can maintain the beautiful victory of the league. So this game, this is the most watched game on the continent. When you talk about club level, when you talk about two teams that have dominated European football, Barcelona, Madrid, the most watched game on the world fraternity in terms of club level. At some point, actually, they were saying that sometimes you have to say that majority of people watch the game. They are more than those we monitored watching the FIFA World Cup final between France and Argentina. More than 1 billion watches this game. Just this game. It doesn't matter who's on top or who's not on top, but the two sides, once they meet, you can see even the time, Sunday, 10 p.m., it allows everybody just to get time and watch. We can't wait. Madrid, they have to get 3 points if they want to maintain the chase in the league.
Okay, so let's come back to Africa and take a look at the South African Premier League fixtures. What exciting games can we expect to see?
Yeah, just know that from South Africa last weekend we're from the Nedbank Cup. So this weekend now they are back to the DStv a championship. Look at one big game we can expect on the day: Orlando Pirates against SuperSport United. I think if you look at the history of the two teams, SuperSport United in the last 6 games they've played, they've managed to get 3 draws. Can they come once again upset Orlando Pirates? For them, they're all about finishing in the top 4. We have to wait and see what happens tomorrow at 6. Then down on the bottom of the screen on the left, then Maritzburg at home, they host Kaizer Chiefs. Kaizer Chiefs, after that victory in the Nedbank Cup against the first division side, there were hopes that maybe they have picked up the form. We'll have to wait and see. But on top, you also have to look at Swallows today when they kick off the weekend against Golden Arrows. Golden Arrows, KwaZulu-Natal, Durban side, they have proved that this season they really have something they can do. But Morocco Swallows also being a side at some point, you think maybe they can maintain consistency, but it has been a problem this season. But let's see what they can cook tonight when they host Golden Arrows. So what a weekend is going to be. Be it Africa, Chiefs that win.
Yeah.
You've just showed the supporters which team they support.
Right, so sisigele sathi nasibuka nje ema log standing lapha locally eme kanjani?
for us, knowing that it's FIFA week, the league is on hold for now. The Sihlang Samnigat will be preparing for the AFCON qualifiers against Cape Verde away and home. But it doesn't change anything because it is quite exciting. Now we are in 19 games so far. And those top 4 teams, they have a chance, of course, to maybe at some point, put their hand on the trophy. Maybe for Highlanders, they are quite behind. Now we would see they were defeated in their last 2 games. Between Highlanders and number 1 Green Mamba, there's a bit of a difference now. We're talking about 11 points. 34 to 45, but I think number 1 to number 3, I'm looking at Young Buffaloes 43, I'm looking at Swallows 40. The exciting thing is that once we return, Swallows is going to play those 2 games, those 2 teams on top. When we return, Swallows will have to play Buffaloes, and their next game they play Green Mamba. So anything can change. But for me, from what I've seen so far in 19 games, the league is between the 2 teams being Green Mamba, Young Buffaloes. Yes, Swallows have got what it takes to challenge them. Yes, Swallows have got what it takes to, give them competition. But from what I've seen, I'm predicting either Green Mamba or Young Buffaloes for this year's M10 Premier League.
Okay, thank you so much, Fabrice Ismail, for giving us that sports update for the weekend and the weekly sports update. As well as the West of
Watch local TV on the go with the Eswatini TV app for only 20 emalangeni. Come on. Do the most with Eswatini TV app. Download from Google Play Store or App Store. We're good together.
Everywhere you go, MTN.
Mzuzu Monyetesha Nsimbe Sportlong Sparkle Gutsini Benati on the show today. And Masonza goes Vulela Katadeg. You can watch us on YouTube. Sparkle Gutsini Benati. Have a lovely and safe weekend. We'll see you on Monday in Salagatle.
To know the players behind the name.
No, it's crazy, especially the journey that I've been on.
With an informal sit-down with some of the biggest stars in the game.
Probably one of the best games I've played.
Delve deeper into the lives of a Premier League footballer and get a personal account of what it takes to succeed at the highest level.
To see a game by game and then go from there.
In the big interview, every Thursday on the one broadcaster that brings you football's greatest season. Proudly brought to you by BetKing. That feeling, that's BetKing.